Yeah.
There is one question coming out which I have to ask you, Ashan. His question is, in your career of 15 years, if somebody were to ask, what are the two most important characteristics that got you here? What are they?
Two important characteristics. As I said, I was always focused, and it was not all about. It wasn't my decisions in my career. Wasn't about the monetary value. I think most of the youngsters kind of choose their jobs based on the monetary value at a younger stage rather than choosing a career path. What's important is when you're young, you need to choose a career and that environment that will help you grow. Because if not, you reach a certain level and you hit a glass ceiling and you can't reach further, and they get frustrated. So in my career, what helped me the most is to keep moving forward and also ensuring that I took in those challenges that gave me those opportunities to actually succeed, to maybe fail, but still I got those opportunities to actually improve myself as an individual, to gain more knowledge as I grew. So that's that.
Especially as we are having these discussions going on, we are also honored to have our guest today with us, where there will be a lot of experiences shared on a very timely topic. So to start with, let me warmly welcome all our students from Staffordshire University who are on the platform, and of course all our guests who are joining us from different parts of the world, along with diplomats and of course delegates, and all the other distinguished guests who are on board as well. So to start with, let me now invite Dr. Rohan Thatukorala, one of the directors at APIT Sri Lanka, as well as the head of the postgraduate program, and also who is the pioneering personality behind this chain of expertise, experience sharing sessions that we continue for a longer period on a consistent basis for our students. So Dr. Rohantha, over to you.
Thank you, Kaushali, and it's actually fantastic to meet up this evening with all the issues that are there in the country. And we have a fantastic guest today who will be talking about a very timely topic about credit cards. I know that every one of you may have had some problem with the credit card. The accounts of 15 years of experience in the banking industry, currently holds and head of card center at the National Development Bank. Prior to his appointment at NDB, he was the head of card and products and e-commerce at the Nation's Trust Bank PLC, leading the product strategy for the American Express, MasterCard, and Diners products at NTB. He was also the head of cards at DFCC under the leadership of DFCC Bank, launched its credit card products in 2018. His vast experience in banking industry commenced at HSBC, which spans over 11 years, which covered several areas of the bank. He holds an MBA from the Cardiff Metropolitan University, UK, a member of the Accreditation of the Business Executives, UK, and member of the Association of Professional Bankers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one of the best in the industry. His name is Ashan Wikramanayake, Head of Cards at the National Development Bank. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rohantha, for that introduction. So thank you to APIT and the management for giving me this opportunity. So I warmly welcome all viewers, students of APIT into this program. I know these are unprecedented times and uncertain times for most of us. However, we all need to move forward. So with that in mind, I hope you are all in a safe and secure place to take part in this session. So today's topic is about credit cards. So I've been part of the credit card business for almost 15 years, since the time I've been with HSBC. And a lot has changed in the digital payments landscape. So the credit card is no longer just a plastic in the customer's hand. It has become a part of the customer's lifestyle. So where I was previously with American Express, the tagline was "Don't live life without it." So it was a very bold statement, where it was directly said that, it's we are directly part of the customer's lifestyle, and we don't want to be distant from the customer's lifestyle. So with that, let me share my presentation. I hope the presentation is visible to all.
Yeah, Ashan, that's great.
Okay, great. So I'll just start. The presentation will be phased out in a way that, I'll give a brief description of how credit cards was formed, what's the current market situation, and also in terms of digital payments, where we are heading and how it will evolve in the next 5 to 7 years. Right. So how it all started, I think it's important to know how things start before you get into, how it is now. So just to share a bit of history, um, it all started with just a dog tag style metal, which was accepted at certain department stores in US, and you can basically show that the dog tag metal and make purchases where it's given on a close circuit base of customers, very selective base of customers, and they were able to use it. So that was just the start of, a credit card. It wasn't a card, but it was a metal tag. Then in 1946, basically, the card system was introduced. It was a charge it card, where within a 2 square block radius, customers were able to make purchases from multiple vendors to the bank. In 1950, Diners International was the first to come up with a credit card, and the Diners Club was introduced in 1950. Then in 1958, American Express was very well known for its travelers checks. Actually, Amex had the travelers checks going on until December 31st, 2020, where they discontinued travelers checks, but Amex was predominantly known for its travelers checks. So they converted that travelers checks business into a credit card business. Then Bank of America started issuing the actual credit cards. To around 60,000 customers, they issued, kind of like a pre-approved card. And that's where Visa International also originated from Bank of America. And so until the 1960s, how they used to work is, if a customer went to a merchant, the merchant would call up the bank and ask what's the balance of this customer, is he eligible to make that transaction, and they would kind of keep a record of it. And then at the day end, they would start billing those customers for those transactions. So in 1960s, Forrest Perry, who was an IBM engineer, kind of found out that you can have this data in a Max chip. And then he embedded the Max chip into the card, and then this data was transmitted through a telephone line. And then in 1966, the Interbank Card Association was formed. That's where MasterCard was actually formed to compete with Bank of America's Visa card network. Right, so that's just a brief history of, how it all started. Right, in terms of the networks, you all would have heard about, all these networks, I'm sure. Visa, Union Pay, MasterCard, American Express, JCB, Diners, Discover. Right, so If you look at the global networks, Visa holds 40% of market share in terms of total spend volume, and Union Pay comes in second with 32%. MasterCard in third at 24%, and American Express at 2%, and the rest for Diners, Discover, JCB, and the other networks. So this is in a global context. So one can argue that Union Pay would have a higher number of cards. Union Pay does have a higher number of cards than Visa. However, in terms of spend, Visa is higher than Union Pay. Union Pay predominantly 70 to 75% of the market share is predominantly in China and the Asia Pacific region. If you look at the Sri Lankan context, Visa has about 70% market share here. MasterCard has about 10% market share, and American Express has 17% market share in terms of credit card spend. So Visa is the largest scheme in the country. So most of the debit cards you would have seen now on Visa, and also the credit cards are on Visa. So MasterCard is also slowly catching up, and American Express has kind of remained to a niche segment and has been hovering around the 17 to 20% market share. So looking at Sri Lanka in terms of an overview, Sri Lanka, for the schemes, for the card schemes, we are a cross-border market, right? The debit card spend growth has seen a higher growth rate during the recent couple of years, mainly driven due to the pandemic, while credit card spend has grown at a lower rate. However, in terms of digital payments, out of the total personal consumer expenses of about 56.2 billion, only 4% of it is on digital payments. So there is still a lot of room for digital payment adoption in Sri Lanka, where predominantly payments are still done through cash, right? So just given a snapshot of what it is, what is the market. So as you all know, we have a 22 million population, a median age of 33. Per capita income is about $12,000. GDP per capita is about $4,000. So in terms of number of credit cards that are issued, we have about 2 million. In terms of spend, of course, it's about 2 billion spend on credit cards. So looking at the spend in Sri Lanka, up until 2019, we had a growth of about 16% year on year. And then when the pandemic hit, there was a degrowth of about 21% in 2020. And then we kind of started, going up again by about 1% or 2% in 2021. So the pandemic really impacted most of the spend on the travel and entertainment segment, which had a higher ticket value. However, we saw growth in terms of e-commerce, the likes of the supermarkets getting into e-commerce, which I will touch later on the industries that actually grew during the pandemic. In terms of the credit cards that are issued, we are currently just over about 2 million credit cards, which has seen a steady growth. However, in this industry, what we have seen is, even though there are 2 million credit cards issued, in terms of the actual number of primary card holders, it could be somewhere around 700,000 to 750,000 active primary card holders. Um, and there's a lot of competition between the market, because if you actually look at it, a single customer would have about minimum 2 to 3 cards in their wallets. And so it's a highly competitive industry, and also a very niche segment, which all the banks are trying to attract. So in terms of the infrastructure we have in Sri Lanka, we have a well-established digital payment infrastructure. If you look at the banking system, slips, you all would have heard about slips and SEFs. It's run through Lanka Clear. So almost all the banks are on these networks. In terms of the international schemes, as I said, Visa, Master, Amex, Union Pay, Dynasty Discover are present for both POS, point of sale machines, and also ATMs. In terms of a local network, we have Lanka Pay, and also recently JCB partnered for the local payment network. So I'll just explain what's the difference between a local network and an international network. So basically how a transaction works is that you will always have a card issuer, the bank which issues the card, and that bank will issue it through a network. So a network is either Visa, Master, or American Express. And so every transaction that is done through that card, say, for example, if it's issued through Visa, it needs to go through the Visa network. Through the Visa network, it gets connected through to the merchant. The merchant gets connected to an acquirer. Acquirer again gets connected to the network, and then that's how a transaction gets completed. So almost all transactions before the local network came in had to be routed through an international network. And as banks and as customers, we incur charges on these networks. So then central bank introduced Lanka Pay as a network for local transactions. So now what happens is that all local ATM transactions done through a locally issued card will go through the Lanka Pay network. So it doesn't go through a Visa, Master, or any other international network. It's completely within the country. The transaction happens within the country. And for those transactions, we do not pay a fee to the international schemes. Similarly, as an expansion of this local network, Lanka Pay partnered up with JCB for a POS solution as well. So a POS solution is where you have this terminal at the merchant location, where they're looking at a local card, a locally issued card, which can be used through this local network. So similar to the ATM network, so the direction is to have a local network as well, so that you kind of reduce the dependency on an international network. So if you all know about RuPay in India, that's where it kind of started, and the central bank in India basically made it mandatory that all locally issued cards should go through that network. So our central bank also has taken a similar approach. However, it will take some time for development and for all the banks to come into this platform. So this is a snapshot of what the industry is like. We have 35 issuers of debit card, 17 issuers of credit cards, and 12 payment acquirers. So in terms of issuers, I've listed out few names here. We also have telcos, Dialog and Mobitel. You would have heard about Easy Cash and Mcash. They are all getting into that fintech field. Then we have payment aggregators. Genie is still part of Dialog. Payable, Pay Here, Direct Pay. Then you have the e-wallets. And then the others on ATM switches, the digital players, software. ATM is the back-end part of it. So as a bank who issues credit cards, who acquires credit cards, we more or less compete with all of these players. So it's not only that our competitors are limited to banks, but it's the entire, all the aggregators who are involved in payments. They are competitors. They can also be enablers. We do work together with most of them, so it's a collaboration, and that's the way forward. Not to really treat each of these players as a competitor, but also through collaboration we have seen better results. We have seen through these synergy activities that we can actually combine these technologies and actually deliver better product to our end consumer. So looking at the consumer spend behavior, during the last couple of years, if you actually look at a breakup of this spend based on the sectors, supermarket contributes to about 18%, fuel about 10%, then you get retail appliances, home appliances about 9%, retail clothing about 6%, so these numbers can vary based on the bank and the product and the customer segments they're on. But in terms of an overall contribution, if you look at the schemes and the general contribution from credit card spend, this is more or less the breakup for it. And in terms of the sectors that have grown during the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic situation, fuel kept on growing, supermarket, utility payments. We saw a lot of adoption of e-commerce from the utility companies, CB, Water Board, all of them getting on the e-commerce platforms. Then we saw players like Daras and Uber, PickMe, really thriving during those couple of years. And also the healthcare with the intermediary care centers, and even most of the pharmacies going into accepting payment cards. So we saw a high growth rate in these segments. And expansion of e-commerce has grown over by 70% year on year during the past 3 years with the adoption of digital payments. And some of the key merchants that are actually driving this growth is, Daras, Sri Lankan Airlines, CV, Keels, PickMe, Uber. So they've been the main players that are driving this spend. And also we see a lot of adoption from smaller merchants, SME merchants, who are just starting off businesses. They are more conversant to accepting payments through mobile apps, and so the volumes are not that great, but it's about inclusion. It's about financial inclusion for all of these segments, and banks are focused on that as well, because that's an area that's growing. So we have seen a shift from offline to online, right? Even though, say, about 4 to 5 years back, even if it was an online transaction, still the customer would choose to pay cash on delivery. And that has changed, and now 50% of the online spend is paid through a credit card or debit card. We still see about 50% on cash on delivery. So in terms of online spends, there is growth obviously on Uber, PickMe, then on airlines. Most of the transactions, 90% of the transactions are done through e-commerce. Utility has seen high growth. Education, retail, and professional services is on online. And some categories continue to be on offline in the sense that the customers physically go and do the transaction. So obviously gas stations, hotels, health, clothing, electrical appliances, and dining continue to be offline. So those will be where the customer will have to physically uh, visit the location. And also in terms of so on the online side, while e-commerce is growing, on the physical side, what banks are looking at is how do you make it faster with the adoption of contactless payments. They want to make sure that the transaction time is much faster. It happens within 2 to 3 seconds rather than you know uh, a cashier having to dip the card, getting the signature, all that, and taking close to about 10 to 15 seconds. Can the customer himself check out? So you would have seen, kiosks having this self checkout point of sales terminals. So that adoption will happen, and contactless payments is actually driving that. So looking at the challenges for the industry during this economic situation. Just to give a brief of, in terms of balances where banks are, as of Q1 2022, we had a total industry outstanding of 135 billion, out of which the top three players are NTB, HSBC, and Sampat. So the portfolio balances keep growing year on year. Um, However, on the flip side of it, with the current economic situation, because we are going through these past 3 years have been very challenging, starting from the East attacks to the pandemic and now to the current situation. So banks have been continuing to give extended plans to customers, and central bank gave certain directions on moratoriums to customers. However, the non-performing loans have actually increased. So remember, it's about 15.7 billion rupees for last year. And so the NPL ratios, the non-performing loan ratio is about 11%. And the cost of funds also keep increasing now with the policy rates being increased. So y'all might know, those who have credit cards, that y'all have got a message from the bank saying that the interest rates are now increased to about 30%, right? So those rates. So as I was saying, in terms of challenges, we see, the interest rates going up during the next quarter as well, with the increase in policy rates. Also, there is a rise in the cost of operations because with the rupee depreciating against the dollar, the card scheme cost and most of the vendors that these card management systems operate on are foreign vendors. So the payments are annual payments all in dollars. In terms of growth, there will be certain limitations because the number of customers that banks can approach with tighter, there will be tighter credit controls from banks in terms of issuing cards, and they will cut down on issuing, a large amount of cards and the credit lines as well. So that's about what's going on in the industry. Moving forward, in terms of how payments will evolve, a customer-centric product and fintech partnerships are going to be the key drivers in terms of digital payments, right? So in terms of so two key things here. Over 70% of financial institutions actually place improving customer experience as one of their top 3 strategic priorities. And over 80% 85% of financial institutions are expected to increase the fintech partnerships in the next 3 to 5 years. So what I'm trying to say here is that there are two key elements here that's going to drive digital payments. One is to improve customer experience, and your products needs to be developed around the customer, and then the growth in the fintechs will actually propel the digital payments industry. Right, so I'll just take you through what's happening and how these developments are taking place. So open banking, you would have heard about open banking. So open banking is basically a collaborative ecosystem in which bank data is shared amongst fintechs through secure APIs, and the banks are able to provide their services with partnerships with fintechs. So that's basically transforming growth in digital payments. So if you look at the world map here, certain countries it's regulated, regulatory driven. Certain countries it's industry driven. So say for an example, in UK or in US, maybe a mobile industry can be driving the fintechs, or a supermarket chain can be driving this sort of operations. So the new generation banks are not just a brick and mortar bank. We have seen a lot of digital banks coming in. They're purely digital banks, right? So in the UK, you have Monzo, Starling, Revolt. So they don't have any brick or mortar branches. It's just all on digital. So the journey, everything, onboarding to customer service, everything else digital platform. And even in Asia Pacific and in India, there are cards now issued by these players. So these are the new generation banks. You all have heard about Apple teaming up with Goldman Sachs to bring up the Apple Card. So that's a digital first experience for all Apple users, just making it much simpler for them to do their transactions just using their Apple phone. So in terms of trends, what we've seen is the real need for real-time payments, and not to make a payment, send a transfer and wait for a day for it to go. Now with SEFT and just pay here, you've seen that how easy it is to transfer money to another person. So that will continue to improve wherever there is a lag or even a payment to a merchant. It's all going to be real time, and it sees adoption with certain ISO standards coming into play. And also in terms of contactless payments, we've seen a rise in contactless payments, and that will continue to grow, and all the schemes are actually supporting it so that it's frictionless for the customer. The next trend is on social media payments. We have seen adoption on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. So all these payment channels basically where merchants will host their products, and then just through a simple message, the customer will be able to make those payments. And also the rise in IoT, Internet of Things. We get sound wave based payments, by payments, wearable devices, smart voice enabled payments. So anything and everything will be capable of making payments. That technology is already there, and some of you might be using it. However, the payment will not be just limited to a card. It will be something you wear. It can be just your face even, which is recognized at the merchant location, and the payments to directly go through. So that's a snapshot of what the industry is and where it is heading, right? So that's basically what I wanted to cover during this session. and just leave you all with this thought as well before we get into the Q&A session. The future of banking and finance is not technology. It is the extreme obsession to be on the side of the customer. Technology is an enabler to make it happen. And this is very important for all banks because we sometimes get carried away in terms of, introducing new technology, being the best digital bank in the country. However, if those capabilities or the technology is not based on the customer experience, it will not succeed. So most of our products and the developments that we do has to be customer centric, and then use the technology to be the enabler to make it happen. So we can move on to the Q&A session now.
Thank you very much, Ashan, and it was fantastic to hear from an industry expert on this whole area of how technology is going to have an impact, as well as where the cards are moving. Ashan, there are many questions coming. The first question coming is, he says, what is the biggest challenge that you have experienced in your last 15 years of being in this industry?
Biggest challenge, I would say, is the technology, how it needs to evolve, because on the card, to have a payments business, there's a lot of back-end activity that happens, and that constantly evolves. Because we are driven by the schemes, there are daily changes, quarterly changes that happen, and all banks have to kind of align to all those. So there is a lot of technology that goes into this business, and it changes. So what you knew a couple of years back might not be relevant now. And going back to the two principles I said about customer experience and technology, what I've seen is in this market, only very few players had actually been successful and been consistent. So that consistency comes in evolving with your customer, because it's a highly competitive environment, and if you try to compete only on a price point, you will go out of business very soon, and or you might have a business which is not profitable and not sustainable eventually. So that's where I see the challenges have been and would continue to be, because you need to evolve with the customer as well as the technology and the capabilities that are driving it.
Ashan, what made you, you're a professional who has only focused by design or by choice to be an expert in cards. Was it accidental, or is it that you, all your life you've handled some of the best brands in this country and maybe globally?
Well, it's I would say by chance and then by choice. So I had the opportunity of working in several departments while I was at HSBC, and even on cards. When you say there are several departments in cards that you really need to be, you need to get that experience to have a complete overview of cards. And I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity. And while you are in that industry, since it continuously evolves and there is new things coming in, it actually interested me a lot to continue in this field. And even now I continue to learn. I continue to know about how this payments landscape will evolve. and it's exciting, and it's about being part of the customer's journey as well as the entire digital payments journey, and be a part of its growth. So it's not the same, right? So even though I've been in this industry for quite some time, it has changed. So it is interesting. Everywhere I go, it's an interesting role.
Ashan, what is your advice to a youngster studying for the master's program? I mean, you have fortunate enough to have had a fantastic career in your life, and pulled through the master's programs, and today, of course, you are in the tipping point of decision making. I mean, what is your advice to a youngster studying for a master's program? I heard today that we have money less than $25 million in the bank. We have, which is about actually half a day's of imports. In fact, I heard somewhere that we don't even have rupees in the banking structure. And good news is that there's a political solution appearing in sight. We can see it now, it's going to emerge. So what is your advice, Ashan, to a youngster?
Yeah, so especially for a youngster who is doing his or her MBA, it's important that you give it your best and really get involved, because I think the learning is, if you really participate in that and really make it your own. Because right now what I've seen in most majority of the students who do MBAs, it becomes just a tick box, but it's up to you whether you want to really make it a tick box, or just get the 3 letters behind your name, or do you really want to learn or gain something out of it? And there's a lot to gain out of it, and that effort is worth, if you really focus and you do it on your own. And the learnings that you get out of looking at different industries, learning from the people around you, are immense. And I was fortunate enough to go through that as well. And that learning is something that you carry on, right? And that focus should be there, and that's something, it's not something somebody can just come and give to you. You need to build it from yourself, from inside, and really push through. It can be very challenging, like all good things in life, doesn't come easy. You really need to push through. I just to give an example, just to share my experience. When I was doing my MBA, my wife just had our first child, only child rather, and I started a new role at DFCC. Also, I was doing a new product, and it took a lot out of me as well, and it became very challenging with sleepless nights. But it becomes very rewarding once you achieve it. So as long as you're focused, I think you can do it, and you can achieve a lot more than what you think you can do.
Ashan, what did you actually get from your master's program? What did you really learn? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What I really learned is basically from the lecturers, from the people. You learn a lot from the people that you study with, you work with. It's the experiences, the shared experiences, that really gives you that you get that knowledge from the people around you, because most of the things that we know are not things that we learned ourselves. It's easier to learn out of somebody who has gone through it and who shares that experience. So for me, having a group of team members from different industries actually helped me to kind of do better at my role in my workplace as well. because I got a complete overview of how other industries work, um, to get that networks also into my scope. So it actually helped me. I think that's the real takeout from the MBA for me.
Ashan, how do you read today's financial challenge that we are faced with? How do you interpret as a person who has ridden the wave in the last 15 years? What is your pickup from where we are and where we need to go?
Yeah, so definitely we have to acknowledge that these are uncertain times, and for a country to move forward, there needs to be political stability, and I hope that we take all the learnings from our past mistakes and move forward. As an industry, I would say the banking sector is at the moment at a stable position. However, there will be tighter controls in terms of curtailing impairments, the credit lines, protecting the bank's assets basically, and also ensuring that there is economic activity, um, to drive the country forward is very important. So personally, as individuals, I think everybody, I think, is going through a tough time, and I've seen a lot of individuals, migrating, trying to go overseas. Um, However, for me and most Sri Lankans, this is our country, and we need to make sure that we rebuild this country. And I think we are a resilient set of individuals, Sri Lankans. We have shown that in the past, and very capable individuals as well in this country, who, if are given the authority and the, the position to do their job well, I'm sure they will do it. So I think because of that resilience, I think we will definitely rise up as a nation, and we are very confident. And even the business community is backing it, and even the international community wants to help Sri Lanka. So if we can put our house in order, I think we should be able to move forward much faster.
Ashan, do you believe in Sri Lanka?
Definitely, I do believe in Sri Lanka. And as I said, we are a resilient bunch of people. Although I must say that sometimes Sri Lankans are known for having a short memory. So I hope we still remember what has happened in the past. And, I think the generation now is different, and they really want a change, and really want to make sure that Sri Lanka thrives.
Ashan, what do you think um, would be the immediate steps that the typical government will have to make with regard to the finance industry in the next 1 week?
So I think with the appointment of the new governor, that was actually a positive step towards the right direction. And when he came into office, certain policies were set that were in line with how the banking community was thinking, and the steps that need to be taken. So those policy decisions are definitely in the right direction. However, of course, there needs to be political stability, so that our discussions with the IMF and the other international community are stable, and they also have trust in our policies, and that we need to have a stable political environment so that those can be executed. So in the next couple of weeks, I think is very crucial, how soon can we get there, and make sure that there is trust placed in the international community to actually help Sri Lanka out of this. And looking at how important we are strategically to most countries, the US, China, India. um, we are blessed with a strategic location. We are blessed with so many natural resources, and we are blessed with capable citizens who have the capacity to actually, be neck on neck with the international gurus, or the top tier individuals. So I think next couple of weeks is definitely going to be crucial as to how the political stability will be in place, and then to take it forward.
Ashan, if you were invited by the current or the future government to come and serve the public sector, what would your response be?
I'm not a politician, nor do I want to be a politician. However, if I am to serve my country in any way that is not political, in my capacity, if it's on the field of my work, or in terms of the knowledge that I can give, yes, definitely, I would get involved. Of course, not on a political level, but definitely on a professional level, if there's opportunity, yes.
Did you ever think that, did it ever cross your mind that you would want to take an overseas appointment even for the short term?
During this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have crossed my mind, but I mean, opportunities do come, right? It's just about you looking for those opportunities, and opportunities are always out there. But in terms of priorities, and where I am right now, my priorities are here, and to my family here, and to my country. Because if every one of us started thinking of going overseas, there will be a lack of capable people in the country if all the capable people started moving out. So right now, of course, my priority is here, and to continue here.
Chan, one last piece of advice to the youngsters who are listening to you. What would your advice will be to them?
Always have a goal, and dream about it, think about it, write about it, fantasize about it, and make it part of your everyday activity, so that you have a direction, you have vision to where you're going, and no matter what, you would still find a way to achieve it. I think don't lose sight of where you want to go by what's going on now, or whatever obstacles that may come your way. As long as you keep sight of your end goal and will keep on working towards it, you can be successful. And you can be very successful if you make sure that the people around you are also successful, and that you help them along the way. And through all our life journeys, it's not about going there alone or going there first. It's about how you got there, that matters. So, yeah.
There is one question coming out which I have to ask you, Ashan. His question is, in your career of 15 years, if somebody were to ask what are the two most important characteristics that got you here? What are they?
Two important characteristics. As I said, I was always focused, and it was not all about. It wasn't my decisions in my career. Wasn't about the monetary value. I think most of the youngsters kind of choose their jobs based on the monetary value at a younger stage rather than choosing a career path. What's important is when you're young, you need to choose a career and that environment that will help you grow. Because if not, you reach a certain level and you hit a glass ceiling and you can't reach further, and they get frustrated. So in my career, what helped me the most is to keep moving forward and also ensuring that I took in those challenges that gave me those opportunities to actually succeed, to maybe fail, but still I got those opportunities to actually improve myself as an individual, to gain more knowledge as I grew. So that was my
Thank you,
strategy.
thank you very much, Ashan. I think for me the crux of today's discussion was actually not about credit cards, but that last piece of advice which you gave, which is that your success is about not making decisions financially, but making decisions for your career and for the future, which I think a lot of people, today's youngsters don't make. Today's youngsters make always decisions on financials rather than on their career. And I think if there's one key point that all MBA students, almost over 400, will be watching and listening to you over the next 2-3 days, Ashan. And if there's one point I want to highlight, it is this last piece of advice that you gave. It's great meeting you, Ashan. Fantastic career, so focused. Even when I read your profile, I just saw one DNA there. And I like to wish you all the very best. And thank you so much for taking time off. Meet you soon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohit. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Abhi.
All right. Bye.